So you're running out of closet space. The good news? You don't need to stop shopping. You just need to start selling with The RealReal. The RealReal is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. Whether it's that mini bag that can't even fit your phone, or those boots you never fully broke in, The RealReal handles everything from photography and copywriting to shipping and pricing. So you can just sit back, get paid, and make room for things that actually feel like you. And with 10,000 plus new arrivals every single day from top designers like Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, and Loewe, all for up to 90% off retail, you're bound to find something perfectly on brand to fill that extra closet space with. Plus, right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Make room for what feels like you. Go to therealreal.com to start selling and get your extra $100 to keep shopping at therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com. Terms apply.
A team of lawyers defend two Marines accused of murder. Special guest Kevin Smokler joins us to chat about the smoothest-talking screenwriter, sexual tension that goes nowhere, and a bar that only serves one beer. You can't handle the truth as we find out if A Few Good Men stands the test of time.
It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says Gladiator was a fly, and Alan says as a father, blah, blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 503rd episode of The Test of Time. And for the 503rd time, I'm James Brief. And for 503 times, he's directed and put this all together. My buddy and pal, my co-host, Alan Noah. How you doing, Al?
Hi, I am doing very well, and we have a special guest joining us today. Welcome back to the show, Kevin Smokler.
Ah, gentlemen, always a pleasure. Good to be here.
I am so glad to have you back. So just a little background. You reached out to us to ask if we were going to do any episodes about movies directed by Rob Reiner after his passing in December. This episode comes out in February. We had some other episodes lined up and the scheduling was tricky, but I'm glad that we're here today to talk about the life of Rob Reiner. I really don't want to talk about his death. I don't think there's much to say. It is a horrible tragedy for all of the reasons, like in those days after, it was just one horrible thing after another that kept coming out. It's a horrible, horrible end to this man's story, but we want to celebrate his life and his work and his achievements. And I want to start the conversation kind of by building off of something that you were talking about the last time you were here, Kevin, in our episode about But I'm a Cheerleader. Before we really got into the movie, we were talking about how movie directors in general have a thing, a theme or a style or a motif that they tend to keep coming back to. In that conversation, we were talking more about how people talk about that with male directors and not female directors. But I'm bringing it up now because when you look at Rob Reiner's body of work, when you look at the movies he's directed, there isn't a crystal clear, immediately obvious thing that is the trademark of a Rob Reiner directed movie. If someone puts on a Tarantino movie or a Wes Anderson movie or a Christopher Nolan movie or a Spielberg movie, et cetera, usually you can tell. And that isn't necessarily the case with Rob Reiner. So I was thinking about it. I was thinking, what's Rob Reiner's thing? And I have a theory, and I'm going to throw it out there, and then you guys weigh in. Let me know if you think this is right. Rob Reiner started his career as an actor. And so I think his thing is that he is an actor's director. He gets amazing once-in-a-lifetime performances from his actors, and through that, he's able to evoke real emotion in all of his movies. That emotion varies. Sometimes it's romance or anger or tension or drama or comedy. That is Rob Reiner's trademark. Kevin, what do you think about that?
It's not bad. It was pretty close to what I was going to say. We do not have with Rob Reiner the I worked in a video store in my early 20s and spent untold hours watching grindhouse and martial arts and porn movies the way we have with Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson and the generation before that equivalent of I made movies with a 16 millimeter camera, Steven Spielberg and people like that.
Right.
Rob Reiner is not someone who grew up dreaming of being a film director, and therefore you do not have a series of things he's always wanted to say once he got a chance to direct. Rob Reiner comes from television. I think that's really important because the thing that is greatest about Rob Reiner movies is not what they had to say, but how they said them. They were sort of they were sort of great examples of movie craftsmanship. I like the phrase actor's director. It's often applied to people like Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet's movies are all very long, and part of the reason he gets called an actor's director is because he just gives the actors tons and tons of space to do their thing. There's such thing as an 87-minute Sidney Lumet movie. Like it all feels very naturalistic, meaning the actors feel like real people. Never the case with a Rob Reiner movie. Rob Reiner movies always feel like movies. And that's okay because he comes from the world of TV and way before HBO and peak TV and David Simon and The Wire and The Sopranos and Sex and the City or any of that. So television was supposed to feel like a sort of hermetically sealed, crafted universe. And that's usually what Rob Reiner movies feel like. And the reason they're great is because he worked with the absolute best people in all of the important categories.
Right.
But you would never say that like Harry and Sally feel like real people. They don't. They feel like inventions of Nora Ephron's mind, but who cares? Because it's Nora Ephron, you know?
Right.
Rob Reiner, he kind of flew under the radar. He never got the Best Director Oscar. But when you look at that run of films, especially that 1984 until like 1992 or even 95 with American President, it's just an unbelievable list of classics. I mean, maybe not everyone's heard of The Sure Thing, but The Princess Bride and A Few Good Men, Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, Misery, When Harry Met Sally. I mean, you're right. He worked with the best people, the best screenwriters, and you got Nicholson and Sorkin, and then he worked with Billy Crystal and, you know, the best comedy writers and Stephen King novels, and unbelievable director. And we're going to talk about one of his most famous films today.
You're absolutely right, James. Beginning with Spinal Tap in 84 and ending in 95 with American President and a brief hiccup for a movie called North, which we won't get into. But you're really talking about a run like, I don't know, Controversy, Dirty Mind, Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, you know, Sign of the Times, something like that. Something where it's just like some people never seem to miss over a stretch of time. And Rob Reiner was one of those guys. The Princess Bride was not a hit, which is hard to believe now.
Right.
But every one of those movies, to a greater and lesser degree, is considered a classic. And if it isn't as known a classic, like The Sure Thing you pointed out, it is absolutely pivotal in one of the actors' careers. The Sure Thing leads to Better Off Dead, leads to One Crazy Summer, which leads to Say Anything. The Sure Thing is John Cusack stepping up to bat, and Say Anything is the home run. You look at the sort of trees that grew from Rob Reiner's, germination of the soil. The most concentrated example is The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Of the 10 or 12 principal actors in that movie, like how many were known as movie stars before that movie?
Right.
Maybe Billy Crystal and Carol Kane, who are so coated in makeup you can barely recognize that it's them. But who wasn't a Broadway junkie knew who Mandy Patinkin was, who hadn't seen This Is Spinal Tap, which was a cult hit, but not much more than that, knew who Christopher Guest was, and so on and so forth. And now, you know, poor Wallace Shawn, who has accomplished a great deal in his life, can't walk across the street without someone yelling inconceivable at him.
Many years ago, I was at brunch in Hollywood, and Wallace Shawn was sitting at the table next to me, and it took all of my willpower to not ask him to say inconceivable. And I didn't, and I'm proud of myself for not asking him, but I really, really wanted to. But let's get into A Few Good Men. This is one of the Rob Reiner movies that we hadn't done on the podcast. I had never seen it before the other day, which I'm a little embarrassed to admit. But it's about the court-martial case of two Marines, Harold Dawson and Loudon Downey, who are accused of murdering Private William Santiago. Dawson and Downey give Santiago a code red, which was only meant to scare him, but the encounter proved fatal. Their defense is led by Daniel Caffey, who's notorious for accepting plea bargains and not going to trial. But Dawson refuses to plead guilty, saying that he was only following orders. Caffey and the other members of his legal team, Sam Weinberg and Joe Galloway, believe that the code red was ordered by Lieutenant Kendrick, but Kendrick denies it. It becomes clear that the initial order actually came from Colonel Jessup, the highly decorated and well-respected base commander at Guantanamo Bay. During a tense courtroom exchange, Caffey is able to get Jessup to admit that he did in fact give the order, leading to his arrest. Dawson and Downey are then cleared of their murder charge. So, James, when this movie came out in 1992, how did it do at the box office?
This movie did very, very well. Fantastic on a number of levels. The movie opened December 11th, 1992. It had a $41 million budget. I had to look up, how did they even spend $41 million? Basically, the salaries, Tom Cruise had around $12 million. Jack Nicholson for only 10 days of shooting, and he even did an 11th day for free. He got $5 million. Demi Moore, $2 million. Rob Reiner got $4 million. Between Kevin Bacon and Kiefer Sutherland, they had $1 million. But as I said, it opened on December 11, 1992. It opened at number one. It knocked out Home Alone 2 from its number one part. That had been there, I think, since Thanksgiving or so.
I'm sorry, what movie?
Sorry, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Oh, thank you.
And it wound up being $141 million in the United States. So almost a 10 times multiplier.
And this was the first and I believe only Rob Reiner directed movie that broke $100 million at the box office.
Oh, that I don't have the information on that.
I'm pretty sure. This movie was based on a play by Aaron Sorkin. That was the first thing that Aaron Sorkin ever wrote. This was his first screenwriting credit because he adapted his own play. And, you know, I feel like when you watch a courtroom drama, a whodunit kind of thing, sometimes you can pick it apart and you could say, now, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because of this, or this doesn't make sense because of that. I can't find any plot holes or things like that in this movie.
A Few Good Men is one of those things that I've just seen across the internet and just heard from people that screenwriting 101, there's a couple screenplays you're supposed to read, and A Few Good Men is apparently one of them. It doesn't mean it's the perfect movie or it's the best movie ever, but this is how you get characters introduced and have a mystery here. And I've just heard so much about this screenplay that it in itself is kind of a work of art.
I beg to differ.
Oh, yeah?
And I love watching this movie. I own it on DVD. There's a half a dozen scenes I would gladly fire up on YouTube anytime I was looking for 7 minutes of distraction. It has 3 or 4 scenes that are beautiful to listen to, have lines of dialogue you will quote back to your friends and remember till the end of your days, and don't really advance the story. And I think that is always the fault of Aaron Sorkin, or really anybody who is so facile at writing good dialogue. My hero, the late great Roger Ebert, used to have this similar complaint about Neil Simon. He was like, Neil Simon is so good at writing dialogue that it sometimes obscures the fact that his dialogue is not in service of anything. And I think there's a little bit of that with A Few Good Men. For example, I don't think we need 3 lawyers, Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, and Kevin Pollak, saying, I'm going to put Jack Nicholson up on the stand and get him to admit to ordering the code red, and then it happens. Like, it's in fact better if we don't have them saying what's going to happen.
Fair.
I don't think we need the flashback when we get introduced to Nicholson's character of him and J.T. Walsh reading the letter from the deceased. That actually takes the movie backwards in time for no discernible reason. This is a warning I give everybody with Aaron Sorkin. He is the smoothest talking screenwriter there is. And it is always advisable with his stuff to say, yes, but what is it actually saying?
That's so funny that you bring up that flashback. It is jarring because unless I missed it, there's no indication that that is a flashback. There's no text on screen that says 3 months earlier or something like that. And it's clear, like, you get it. They're talking about Private Santiago as if he's alive because he is at that point. It's not difficult to discern, but it is jarring. And it does kind of give away everything because we hear Jessup say that Santiago is not to be let off the base. He is to be punished or disciplined or taught a lesson or whatever the phrasing is. And it's a great scene because it's Jack Nicholson chewing the scenery, pretending to want to call the president to forfeit the position in Cuba. And, he's just so sarcastic. And the way he rips into J.T. Walsh is great. And you get your first glimpse of psychotic Kiefer Sutherland. All of that stuff is great. Also, I understand why they didn't start the movie with that, why they started with the Code Red. That's a much more dramatic, thrilling opening to the movie. But I do think that you probably could just lose that scene in terms of story, and that might make the ending more impactful because they don't know that Jessup ordered the Code Red. We don't know. And it's also funny, Kevin, that you mentioned Roger Ebert. He said that in his criticism of A Few Good Men. I copied and pasted it. He said, the flaws are mostly at the screenplay level. The film doesn't make us work, doesn't allow us to figure out things for ourselves, is afraid we'll miss things if they're not spelled out. And I think that's true in a couple of cases, but really with that one flashback scene.
It's probably the 20th time I've seen this movie, and I still like it. It's still, just great fun to watch. And this was the first time I said, if you had to say in a sentence what A Few Good Men is about, spiritually, and not just a plot description, A Few Good Men is about how honor and loyalty are not the same thing. Honor is a question of doing what's right, and loyalty is a question of doing what you're told.
Right.
I think that's the mistake that is at the sort of tragic center of Jack Nicholson's character. But it also means it is fair to ask, what is in it for Jack Nicholson's character to order a Code Red? He's got a screw-up Marine at his base. Why doesn't he just say, get this loser off my base? What the hell's he doing here? Why is he making trouble for us? And if the loser says, well, I have information on a fence-line shooting, Jack Nicholson's character's career is on a rocket to the moon. Why doesn't he just say, why would you believe that guy over my men? Come on. His fear of what the victim in this movie can do seems really overstated and misplaced. And it's an amazing scene where he admits to ordering the Code Red. But it is also fair to say there's too much for this character to lose in ordering the Code Red. So, why does he do it?
Yeah, fair take. I'd only say the flashback scene that you were both talking about earlier, I think that would be the only thing that gives us a reason why he does what he does to Santiago. I think it's a combination of two things. It's a little bit of hubris and bullying. Basically, I can do no wrong. I'm sure he's molded some weaklings into perfect Marines, and also a little bit of bullying. Noah Wile's character kind of tongue-in-cheek talks about, yeah, I got my Code Red and it sure worked. I think that's kind of the idea that it's just a little messing around until it goes horribly wrong.
That's totally fair. We could say the character never figured it would never go wrong. So if it's outside the rules of being a Marine, there's probably an arrogance that he thought he could get away with it.
Nobody thinks that Santiago is supposed to die from this. I think at most this was some kind of manslaughter.
Except there's that doctor, played by Christopher Guest, in the least funny role in the entire movie. Because this is a serious movie, but there are moments of comedy throughout. And Christopher Guest, who is hilarious, and, a friend of Rob Reiner from Spinal Tap, he just is as straight-laced as it comes. But, it is also pretty obvious in terms of unpacking that mystery of, was this rag poisoned? Seems unlikely. And we know that this private was having a hard time on the runs, and he was tired, and he was talking about how tired he was, and maybe he did have this condition, which could have led to him having this severe reaction to the rag. But, I guess you wouldn't want that to get out, would you, doctor? Because then that would hurt your career. That's Caffey's line of questioning. That is kind of a moment of good lawyering, because then Kevin Bacon's character objects, and then the judge says, yes, that will be stricken from the record. But the people on the jury heard it. You can't unhear that. And that's a pretty damn good argument. James, as a doctor, this lactic acidosis, is that a real thing? It seemed believable.
I don't really know what the disorder is that you cover up the lungs and then you drown in blood. I'm not really sure what the heck that is, to be honest.
Okay, fair.
Luckily, it may be something I learned years ago in medical school, but it does not generally apply to my general pediatrics practice. So I'm very glad I'm not familiar with that kind of disorder.
Fair enough.
But the one thing that they did say is some kind of congenital disorder that this kid, he wants to be a Marine. You'd figure maybe by 18, he'd know that he can't get through this. But, maybe he was one of those athletes in high school that you can get through a little bit of, varsity tennis and basketball and maybe even track, but that's not Guantanamo Bay,
Sure.
That kind of stuff. And I think it finally caught up to him. So it's just one of those horrible things that just gets unmasked when you do 40-mile hikes and then whatever that rag was that led to his death.
Right. Kevin, I want to go back to something you said earlier about how you don't necessarily need there to be 3 lawyers, because we have Kaffee, his boss, Joe Galloway, played by Demi Moore, and then Sam Weinberg, played by Kevin Pollak. And Sam Weinberg, he says specifically, I have very little to do here. I'm just here to assist. And that's true. And then he really doesn't do anything in the courtroom other than bring in those pilots at the end who are just there to intimidate Jessup. To me, the bigger crime is the character of Joe Galloway, in part because it's Demi Moore, who is this amazing actress who is given very, very little to do in this movie. In the beginning of the movie, she's tough as nails. You get that right away. This is not a woman to be trifled with. But then as the movie goes on, she is surrounded by these very strong male characters, and she just looks so relatively weak. I really hated that.
She feels miscast to me, and I also feel like the role is kind of underwritten.
Yeah.
I think those 3 actors have very good chemistry together. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they do as pairs of 2. It's mostly the 3 of them working together that's great. And of course, this is kind of where we meet Kevin Pollak, right? It'll be another couple of years that he's part of the sort of ensemble troupe of The Usual Suspects, and then we're off and running with Kevin Pollak being one of the great character actors of our time. But if we're gearing up for this showdown between Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, I hate to say it, we don't need 3 heads on the poster. We need the showdown between Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. And I almost feel like, no slag to Demi Moore, but there's not enough in that role for an actress of her caliber or at her level at that point. I would have liked to have seen Sam Weinberg and Joe Galloway be 2, sort of up-and-coming character actors like Kevin Pollak was at that time. And I think you could have created just as interesting a little trio with the 3 of them. And also, by the way, without the needless, no one in this movie looks as fabulous as Tom Cruise and Demi Moore. And so you spend the whole time being like, well, we're clearly the 10s and everybody else here is a 6. I mean, Jack Nicholson's great, but either make Nathan Jessup as fabulously handsome as Tom Cruise or something like that, or quit hinting at sexual tension that you're never going to do anything with.
Yeah.
I think the 2 co-counselors have each one specific role in the film. Al, you nailed Kevin Pollak's. He has to get those airmen. But Demi Moore's character, I think, is really there for one reason. It's that scene to kind of give Kaffee the moral decision that he's going to put Jessup on the stand. I wonder if she is miscast, because I wonder if the character might be a little more interesting as a 40-year-old woman. And she could still be beautiful.
It's a good call.
I have to kind of trust that Demi Moore is a good lawyer, because that's kind of what you're supposed to expect. But she is also young, like Tom Cruise. It probably would have been better to be maybe, or interesting. I'm not saying this better, but interesting if it was a 40-year-old woman that, yeah, she's a good lawyer, but she just can't get the breaks that the men are getting because it's 1991.
I think that's a really good call, James. I like your version of the movie.
And kind of to your point, Kevin, about the sexual tension that goes nowhere, I really really hated that scene that is kind of a date, maybe a date, kind of, sort of. They say,
So true.
is this a date? It kind of feels like a date. That really just made my skin crawl because it's completely unnecessary. Look, I'm glad that the movie doesn't end with them going on a date. I think that was in one of the versions of the script.
Yeah.
Let's go on a date, but make sure your socks match or something like that, which is a callback to earlier. That would have been worse. But even still, this idea that they are on a date is pointless. They are coworkers. They grow to respect each other. Great. Yes, they are attractive people, but it feels extra shitty because when we are with Jessup and he is so sexist when he's talking about getting a blowjob from a superior officer. It just kind of sucks for him until there's a lady president. And then Kendrick, the Kiefer Sutherland character, makes his evil little guffaw of like, woman president. But like Jessup is the villain. He is sexist. Kaffee is the hero. That sort of thing should never enter his mind. And I'm glad it's not worse, but I do hate that they even use the word date in that scene. They could have a scene where they're just talking and being more people and kind of letting their guards down and having a beer without there ever being any kind of hint that, oh, there might be something romantic or sexual here.
100%. There's a famous, maybe a rather infamous story that when this movie was in development, Joe Galloway was not specified as a woman or a man. And then they cast Demi Moore. And of course, there's nothing in the screenplay that says Demi Moore and the Tom Cruise character end up together. And some executive at Columbia was like, well, why is the Demi Moore character a woman if Tom Cruise and her are not going to end up sleeping together? And Aaron Sorkin, who, frankly, if you look at his career, does not have a fabulous track record of writing women characters, is like,
True.
Actually said women characters exist for some other reason than to sleep with Tom Cruise, which I think is a great answer.
Yes. One thing that really does stand the test of time in a not so great way is the focus in this movie about what it means to get and then follow an illegal order. This has been in the news since Senator Mark Kelly and a handful of other Democratic lawmakers were talking about that, just saying, hey, men and women in the military, if you get an illegal order, you don't have to follow it. Then they're going to be court-martialed or disciplined or whatever the hell. But just hearing that topic being broached in this movie from 1992, man, that does feel kind of ahead of its time because that's just in the conversation today.
I mean, it's more important than ever because Dawson and Downey are also cleared of the murder charge. They are convicted of conduct of becoming a Marine, and they are dishonorably discharged, which they should be, because they should not have followed that order.
Right.
This was not fire on civilians. This was an act that I truly believe those two cadets did not think they were doing anything wrong. But as Dawson does realize, he's like, no, we did something that Marines shouldn't do. They absolutely should not have followed that order.
When Aaron Sorkin is at his best, he can take issues that seem dramatically specific to the thing we're watching and actually make them about, like, even though he never says it, like the fundamental questions of our democracy. Is loyalty or conscience more important is something that has been with us since the beginning of the Republic. It's something that, like, the Continental Congress debated on that hot first week in July in Philadelphia in 1776. I mean, like, it is his skill that he took a story that is a true story. It actually, his sister was a lawyer in the JAG Corps, and this story did happen, not exactly the way it happens in the play and later the movie, and makes it a question of, like, one of the fundamental questions of, like, what it means to be an American. That's amazing. When Aaron Sorkin is at its best, he's really great at that. When he's not, is you know, just some of the sort of rather minor objections I have with this movie and stuff he would do in the future, is he sort of never follows through on what his fancy dialogue means.
I would love it, Kevin. If you want to keep going and keep picking apart Aaron Sorkin's work, that's fine by me. I'll give you one moment that kind of made me laugh, which is extra funny because Aaron Sorkin wrote the script while working as a bartender. Yeah. But when Kaffee goes into the bar to talk with Kevin Bacon's character, he orders a beer. And then the waitress brings him a beer. Like, don't you need to be a little more specific? What kind of beer? Do you want a light beer? Is there a particular brand that you like? I mean, Aaron Sorkin's working as a bartender. Shouldn't he know better?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it would have been great if he had pointed to like whatever Kevin Bacon was drinking and said, I'll have what he's having or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe if he was a regular, then he could say, I'll have the usual. And maybe then the bartender knows he always gets a Heineken or whatever.
Or if they were at the oldest bar in New York, they could go to McSorley's, and they only serve one beer there.
Right,
So,
exactly. That works too.
they only serve the McSorley's beer.
Although someone then would be like, why is McSorley's in Washington, D.C.?
Right, that would be a problem.
Kevin, do you have any other nitpicks with the script?
No. Some of it is just a flaw of the genre and has nothing to do with Aaron Sorkin. The thing that all trial movies have to do is they have to keep stem winding until you get to the courtroom. Because the courtroom has to reveal what you've been thinking about the whole movie.
Right.
Courtroom movies always feel like, the first 2/3 has 20 more twists than are necessary. And I think that's just a flaw of the genre. I happen to love courtroom movies, which is part of why, like, this movie is so special to me, even though I think its flaws are very apparent. It's why I think it's so much fun to watch. To Aaron Sorkin's credit, I think the twists often feel unnecessary, but other than the ones we mentioned, it's pretty hard to find a scene that isn't fun to watch in this movie. Like, they may be unnecessary for the sort of forward thrust of it. Is there a moment in this movie where you're ever like, well, shoot, I guess now it's definitely time to pull the popcorn out of the microwave, because what happens for the next 4.5 minutes is of no consequence to anything, and it's boring to boot.
Right. When you were talking about the chemistry between the three lawyers, there's also great chemistry between Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon as these guys who are friends. They play pickup basketball together, but they're on opposite sides in this case, and they respect each other enough to say, no, you're wrong, when they really believe it. That scene when Kevin Bacon's character is saying that the code red isn't in the book, so it must not be a real thing. And then Kathy turns it around by taking the book and saying, point to the page that shows the location of the mess hall. That's smart. And, the way he grabs the book right out of his hand after Kevin Bacon, thinks that he's really nailed it.
Super fun.
I like their sparring. I really like their chemistry.
I guess let's talk about the scene. Tom Cruise does a fantastic job, but I would just say that Jack Nicholson gives a master class in acting. Nicholson, as I said earlier, was paid $5 million for 10 days of shooting, $500,000 a day. And Rob Reiner tells a story how he didn't quite get all the shots. So he's like, would you mind coming for an 11th day? And he's like, sure, Robbie, for you, anything. They did this scene about 6 times or so. They had to get all the reaction shots. They had to get the jury, and then they had to get Cruise and Pollock and Bacon and everyone. Apparently Nicholson gave 100% on the scenes that he knew were not going to be shot of him. The camera's not on you, Jack. The first take actually was not on Jack Nicholson, and apparently the entire crew was just in awe when they yelled cut, and Jack Nicholson gives 110% in here.
It just reminds you, like, something that I think Rob Reiner as a director knew intimately, and people who are as experienced and have been making movies as long as Jack Nicholson even was at this time. No matter how big a star anybody is, a set is always a communal experience, and your roles are always defined in relation to other people. Someone like Jack Nicholson comes to the set, he has the self-awareness to know that he is the person of most renown on the set. The folklore of it was that he just did it 50 times, and he said, I just like to act. And I also think Jack Nicholson is probably if you're getting paid all this money, you've got the reputation of the best chops of anybody on set, well, demonstrate it. Don't, phone it in as Marlon Brando was famous for doing, I think that's part of what comes with achieving legendary status, is how sort of well you wear your legendary status.
Yeah. Here's Jack Nicholson, a legendary actor. He's with Tom Cruise, another legendary actor, but, the next generation. And they're just so good at what they both do. It's this battle of wits between the characters, but it's also with these two actors going toe-to-toe. And it's easy to imagine that the young guy can't hang with the older pro, but he does. Tom Cruise, as an actor, holds his own. Kathy, the character, wins. I think it's an amazing performance by both actors. I don't know that we need to declare one as the winner. You feel the anger and emotion coming off of both of them. It is a powerhouse of a scene. And kind of like I was saying at the beginning about Rob Reiner and his secret sauce as a director, these are two legendary actors that are giving once-in-a-lifetime performances in the same scene. Like, that doesn't happen very often. It's the kind of thing you have to watch. I had this movie on while my wife was out. She came home maybe 10 minutes before this scene started, and she just sat down on the couch and didn't move because she was going to wait to see this scene. It has a gravitational pull.
Yeah. I pity the people in acting schools and who have to conduct auditions, who have to listen to "You Can't Handle the Truth" for a dozen times a year for the rest of their lives, But there's a reason for that.
You talked before about how Jessup is the sexist character, but I will definitely add, he is a total anti-Semite. There's this line right after, "You can't handle the truth." And what is the truth? The truth is that the world is a dirty, ugly place, and you need people like me on the wall. Who's going to go on that wall? You, Kathy? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? For no reason at all, these two characters have zero interaction in their entire life.
There's a reason. But Kevin, I'll ask you first as our very special guest. Do you think A Few Good Men stands the test of time?
It absolutely does. I always take your question to mean, like, is it as enjoyable to watch now than if you saw it in the theater? Or are you just kind of going like, oh shit, man, 1992, it's like the filmed version of a bottle of Zima. But I don't think it's that, other than some pretty awful shirt wear on Tom Cruise's part. And the fact that, of course, like, nobody has a cell phone and all those usual reasons why something feels from 30 years ago. It's a remarkably good watch. It captures pretty much everyone involved at a really interesting point in their career. And the issues it raises, as you both have very skillfully pointed out, are as germane now as ever. Yeah, absolutely.
James, what do you think? Do you think the movie stands the test of time?
Absolutely. I think the film is fantastic. You did point out some, I wouldn't necessarily agree that they're flaws, but it's interesting had, say, the flashback scene not been there, or perhaps more importantly, had the audience still had some mystery about how far back did the conspiracy go, and J.T. Walsh's character, which we didn't talk about much. He's always a great character actor. The acting is fantastic. It happened to go against a really tough year in the Oscars. Unforgiven took a lot of things. Rob Reiner wasn't even nominated for Best Director. It's a wonderful film, and there's a reason why it was liked back then, and it's still talked about today. So yes, for me, it stands the test of time. What about you, Al? Does A Few Good Men stand the test of time?
Absolutely. This is a very entertaining movie. I really enjoyed watching it. Like I said earlier, I'm a little embarrassed that I'd never seen it before, but I'm really glad that I've seen it now. There are incredible performances, mainly from Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. I wish Demi Moore had more to do. Kevin Pollak is great. He also doesn't really have that much to do, frankly. Kevin Bacon's great. Kiefer Sutherland is scary as fuck. And I mean that as a compliment because he's supposed to be intimidating as hell. Oh, just another random thing that made me laugh is Kathy shagging fly balls at softball practice and then drinking a bottle of Yoo-hoo. I mean, Gatorade existed in 1992. Drink that. Drink water. Drink anything other than Yoo-hoo.
Yoo-hoo is such an odd drink. I mean, you're either in the cult of Yoo-hoo or you're not. And I like some chocolate milk. I love an occasional good, Hershey syrup or Quick or something like that. But Yoo-hoo, no. It is not chocolate milk. It doesn't even claim to be chocolate milk. It says like chocolatey beverage or something.
Yeah, I mean, definitely don't drink that after a workout. But yes, I very much enjoyed watching this movie. And of course, it stands the test of time. But Kevin, thank you again for joining us. This was great. We always love having you on the show.
Gentlemen, a complete pleasure. If you'll have me, I'll do this anytime. It's a hell of a lot more fun than being court-martialed for a code red.
We will have you again and again and again. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about Pretty in Pink. That movie is celebrating its 40th anniversary. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Until then, we want to hear from you guys. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Write to us. Let us know what you think about A Few Good Men, about Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore. Let us know if you yourself cannot handle the truth. That's okay. We don't mind. We love you whether or not you can handle the truth. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.